Salvo is a super simple mini-game of tactical naval combat set in the Second World War. Advanced Salvo is the advanced version. The original Salvo is pretty much a postcard game. It's super small, the rules are super short. The advanced Salvo, I thought it was going to be more advanced, kind of that's what the name seems to hint at. Yes and no, there are optional rules, there are advanced rules, but the game is pretty much the same. However, this package here, that is much bigger than the original game, contains a lot of stuff. So maybe instead of Advanced Salvo, a better name could have been Deluxe Salvo. But in any case, it is pretty much the same game. But I'll tell you about the game and about the few differences that are there in terms of rules. But most importantly, the differences that are there in terms of components. In Advanced Salvo, you do have a rule book instead of just a simple a very small sheet of rules, but we'll talk about the rulebook later. The biggest difference between Advanced Salvo and the original Salvo is ships. You get a ton of these. You really get a lot of ships from 4 nationalities. This is the European theater version. Probably, I haven't seen an Advanced Pacific version on Board Game Geek. Maybe there is, maybe not. You get British, French, German, and Italian. And again, a lot of ships, a lot of variety, a lot of different confrontations that you can try. Also, if you are, like me, a teacher that teaches about history and warfare, and maybe you want your students to give a try to the game, one of the problems with games in this case is that you need multiple copies for a large class. Here, a single copy of Advanced Salvo will give you enough ships to allow a large class to play, which is great already. And this package here, you also get a board. Advanced Salvo comes with a board, which is simply a long strip. Here it is. Simply a long strip of paper divided in bands with numbers on it, and the ships will go here. A standard confrontation pits 2 ships one against the other. That's a standard situation, a standard game. You can also play with more ships than that, with multiple ships per side, but this is the main traditional, typical thing. Also, the game can be played solitaire. There is a simple system to control the movement of the enemy ship if you're playing solitaire. Or it can be played by 2 players, with both players, of course, controlling a ship or multiple ships. Only movement need to be controlled by an AI if you're playing solitaire, because movement really is the only relevant decision that you take. You move, you resolve movement, and then you fire with all that you have. There is no reason to hold fire. Other things that you find in the advanced package is player rates, 2 neat player rates, 2 of them double-sided and also upside down, I just noticed. So you can give 1 to each player, or if you're playing solitaire, then you simply keep 1 with a side up, the other one with the other side up, and you have all the tables and all the information available there. Nice, well done player rates. Also, you get 2 extra scenarios, which are the River Plate and Denmark Strait. Scenarios with instructions about the scenarios and specific ships that will be used in that scenario. In this case, you have to cut them out. I did not do this with these ones. I haven't played these scenarios yet. Oh, and as I said, the rule book. The rules, the basic rules of Salvo are still the same. See standard game instructions, and pretty much these are the rules. A page and a half. This is all that you need to play the game. But then you have a lot of other stuff in this rule book because of the optional rules. Then here you have the game tables, but you also have those on the player aid. Here we have the advanced rules, so that again should mainly be seen as optional rules. Then you have another set of optional rules, tables for the advanced rules. more optional rules. You can adopt any and all of those. These are all optional. And then guidelines to play battles with multiple ships, scenarios for the standard game and advanced game scenarios, and designer notes. So definitely a lot of material, a lot of options that are open up thanks to the elements, to the information contained in this game, as in that manual. As for the game itself, the game pretty much remains the same. I can just summarize it for you because it is so simple and basic. A lot of information on each counter. Here you have the size of the gun that determines the damage that you will inflict, an indication of the class of the ship. Here you have flotation points. When that value is reduced to 0, allows your ship sinks. And you will need probably a piece of paper and a pen to keep track of the changing stats, or like I do, I use wooden cubes to record the numerical changes on the various stats. Here you have turrets. When you get damage to the turrets, you receive negative modifiers when you're firing. Here you have speed, which is used for turn order, and this modifier here is armor, that is a modifier that is applied to the roll of the opponent when the opponent hit you and is rolling for damage. These other three modifiers here, I kept them for last. This is the bonus that you use when you're firing against the opponent, depending on the side that is facing the opponent. If you are firing with your broadside, you use that bonus there. In this case, that would be +1. If you're firing with the bow or the stern, you use one of the other two modifiers, which are, in this case, for example, +1 and +1. Of course, these are not as good as the modifier that you get if you're firing with your broadside. At the beginning of the game, you roll on a table to determine the weather, then you roll again to determine, and the weather will affect several things, chances to hit, initial distance. You roll for the initial distance, which can be modified, and then that tells you, well, again, the distance at which the two ships are placed on the board. You can shift them around as long as the distance that you obtained from the roll is not changed. And basically the board is neutral. All that really matters is the relative distance between the two ships. During your turn, what you do is pretty much to move, fire, and then you roll to see if the game is over. The game may end abruptly at the end of a turn because the two ships lost contact, something happened, one of them was recalled, whatever. To move, you must make a decision. You must choose between three possible movement options. One is to present the broadside to the opponent, or to move closer to the opponent, in which case you turn the ship accordingly and you move it one closer, or to move away from the opponent, in which case you turn the ship the other way around and you move it. So the movement also, of course, will affect the side that you're offering, and therefore the bonus that you're using when you're firing. In the standard game, the ships will move in speed order. You can also choose another rule that says the ships move simultaneously, in which case with two players, you select your move, your maneuver secretly, and then you reveal it. You just write it down, and then you reveal it. I like that. And then once the players have moved, which will determine position and distance, they fire. Again, usually they fire in order, starting from the biggest guns and going down to the smaller guns, or you can choose optionally to resolve fire simultaneously. Usually players fire once per turn, unless they are range 1 or 2, in which case they fire twice per turn. To resolve combat, you roll 2d6 on the fire table, and you compare the result. You'll read the result in the column based on the distance from the target. So if I am here at 1, 2, 3, 4 distance, I look at this column here, the result will simply be a miss or a straddle, which is a hit. And you apply modifiers to the die roll to hit, based on the weather. As you can see, if you are firing for multiple turns on the same target, better chances to hit, and the same if you hit the target last turn. If the target is a light cruiser, then you get a penalty. If it's a miss, nothing happens. If you scored a hit, then you roll 3d6 on the straddle table and you apply modifiers. You subtract the armor of the target, you add the bonus coming from the guns that are bearing in that attack, penalties or bonuses based on range. Close range, you will inflict more damage, of course. Far away range, not so much. The firer may have received turret hits in previous turns, in previous combat rounds, which now result in penalties, and then also there are modifiers based on the size of the guns. Results, you roll here, possible results will be no effect, so you thought like you hit, maybe you did hit, but it was a dot, something happened, or you thought you hit, but you did not. Damage can be flotation hits, can be turret hits that will turn into penalties. Flotation hits means that you're losing flotation points, you may go down under the sea. S is speed damage, so you lose speed points. And then you have special, which is always neat. Every time that you get a special damage or a critical hit, it's just more fun. And you simply roll on the corresponding table and you say what horrendous extra effect you have to resolve. Now, in the advanced rules, there is also an extra table that you have, which is called the narrative damage tables. It allows you to have more narrative for what here is simply an F or a T or an S. It flashes out the story. So basically, when you receive a turret damage, then you see what type of damage that is on this table. Flotation damage, you see the resolve it rolling on this side of the table. Usually that effect only gives you more story, doesn't have any further effects. In reality, there are some other possible effects that may happen. These other extra effects are represented by these codes here, these letters here, and then you roll a d6 for each such letter. If you roll 1 or 2, the effect is implemented. 3, 2, 6, and nothing happens. So in reality, usually, statistically, you should just have this effect here, which is you know where you were hit, the nature of the hit that you took, but in game terms that has no effect, but you may have some extra effects that may need to be resolved. Definitely this adds more story to the experience. At the end, you roll on a table, there's a chance that the turn will end. You also have a couple of extra rules. So some ships will be able to fire with torpedoes, things like that. The weather may change things. But this is the basic idea, that you are inflicting damage on the opponent, reducing their chance to move. Maybe their speed will go down to 0, and then they will be unable to move. They're then in the water. Maybe you sink them. Maybe the encounter ends early because the game ends suddenly. As for extra rules, as I said, there are a lot of them. In most cases, the advanced rules really activate modifiers. And of course, those modifiers do also alter gameplay a little bit, in that you will try to create the conditions to exploit your modifiers, but not all that much. This is not really a game changer. The fun thing to me is the narrative table. Actually, I really like the narrative tables and what they add. As for the optional rules, then there are possible optional rules for smaller main guns, torpedoes, torpedo dots, loss of speed. Actually, this is one that I like. Probably it's one of my favorite ones. When a ship's current speed is 5 or less, you roll a d6 when you're performing a close or withdrawal action, which is moving closer or moving farther. In reality, maybe that you are not able to perform the maneuver, because a roll equal to or less than the ship's current speed has no effect, but if you roll higher, then actually you're not able to change the range. I like this. This actually does add quite a bit, with more options here. Simultaneous fire is also one that I like. Simultaneous movement I like very much. And other things of this kind. Environmental options, you can choose the sea in which you are fighting. That changes the chances of encountering certain types of weather. Not a game changer, not a new game, not really an advanced version in that it is particularly more complicated than the previous one, more complex, more difficult. No, it is the same game. Which is good to me, because what I liked of the old Salvo was, in fact, the incredible simplicity and yet the decent degree of story and theme that still came out of such a system. It's a system where you make one decision per turn, closing or staying where you are, or closing in, staying where you are, or moving away. But that matters, actually, that does matter. There are subtleties here, not incredible subtleties, but again enough to give me the sense that I am indeed in control of a portion of the story. It's a war game. You should never be in control of everything. You cannot control the weather, you cannot control the opponent, random stuff will happen. So you are, of course, dealing with a degree of chance, which is more than welcome in a war game in general. In a war game with this topic, where a single hit, hitting one part of the ship rather than the other, creates vastly different effects, and the game does capture that. And again, though, he's not one of those games like B17 where you roll on several tables. There's more detail there, but of course there are also more procedures to implement. You just have a super simple mechanic to resolve movement and combat, enough tables to create a sense of theme without those tables being overwhelming. It is a mini game. Don't ask this game to be a simulation. Don't ask from this game more that it can give, but it can give some good fun, and it is a good filler war game. Super simple, but with some theme, and definitely pleasant to play. As for Advanced Salvo, if you enjoyed the original Salvo, you may invest a couple of bucks more. The game is not too expensive. You can invest a bit more on the advanced version, then you get a lot of extra stuff, more options, chances to play larger battles, more scenarios, more things that you can do. Not a game changer, but I would say definitely a nice improvement over the overall package that Salvo was.